Are you there?
Yeah, what's the claim?
Well, I'm just asking a question. So you're saying that it's better to be than not to be?
Correct.
So was it better that God created than if he didn't create?
We kind of already covered this. Um,
Sorry, I joined like 3 minutes ago. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's better to be than not to be, but that's not a statement about necessity. You're
Uh,
trying to smuggle in necessity into existence.
you're
Like
uh mhm.
existence is not a property, necessity is. Does that make sense? Like Kant, I mean, if you read Kant, that's his critique of classical theism. So Kant does have a valid point, but the soundness of Kant's project was never established. But that's talking about a whole nother metaphysics when it comes to like logic.
I
I,
see. I
I'm
mean,
just pointing out
I
that you're not asking the same question that Kant is because Kant is literally questioning the metaphysical foundations of logic itself, whereas you're assuming that necessity itself is a property of existence. But the theist is not making that claim.
well, can you clarify like what you mean by existence?
It's just reality.
Well, yeah, so God is like an entity. I mean, he's subsistent being itself, right? So God like in a sense exists, but he just is, right? Um but like my question is if you're trying to say that it's better to be than not to be, then I'm trying to understand like I mean, how do you not then enter some form of like necessitarianism with respect to God's will and creation? That's like my question.
I thought I addressed that because necessity is a property and existence is not.
Yeah, existence is not a predicate.
Do you hold to the real distinction between essence and existence?
That's
I think
literally
it's
Kant's
distinction
point,
though.
right? Existence precedes essence. Our
Wait, are
So
ability to
you?
hold up.
know, our
In
ability to
God,
know, hold on, our ability to know God, right, depends on us existing in the first place.
mm-hmm,
So we have a conditioned, quote unquote, knowledge of God's essence.
mm-hmm.
Wait, hold on. Sorry, could you repeat that real quick? Our ability to know depends on what?
Our ability to know God's essence is dependent upon our existence. Does that make sense? On the fact that we exist in the first place.
Well, yeah, well,
So
yeah, of course, and yeah,
existence itself is not a property like necessity is. So the
I don't
thing that
really see how
right,
that follows.
what do you mean what follows? No, what I'm trying to tell you is that it's a real distinction between what is necessary and what actually exists.
Yeah, but like
So
I don't
I'll ask you a
understand.
different question, right? Like, how about this? Are you certain that the world exists?
Yes.
Then there's no problem.
Well, yeah, like there's a like I don't really understand like okay, look, I'm not too well read on Kant. Okay, but like I'm trying to understand like the kind of metaphysics that you're employing to get to the point that you're at because to my understanding, especially if you're a
We're going in a
Catholic
circle
out
again.
what?
We're going in a circle again. We already just like literally spent like the past 40 minutes talking about this with halftime on veganism, which was a more interesting topic than this. But go ahead.
I mean, I'm sorry, I can't I have no way of going back in time to know what you spoke about, so I apologize. So, I mean, we I can leave if you want me to.
No, that's fine. Continue.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to understand, are you like a Scotist? Or like what is your position on the essence and existence distinction? Because to my understanding, like especially St. Thomas Aquinas, like in order to affirm the existence of God at all, you need to get that off of the ground, you need to affirm the real distinction between essence and
So
existence.
there, as far as I know, there's no objective proof for the existence of God. There's
Hold up.
Really?
only deductive demonstrations
Wait, hold
that
on a
it's
second. Wait, are you a
logically coherent.
Catholic?
Yeah.
Okay, that's contrary to the faith. You can't
No, it
the
is not.
Vatican no, Vatican I states that you can demonstrate with absolute certainty that God exists. read Vatican I. I can. Do you want me to quote? Like I can
Sure,
send you.
absolutely. Go
Okay,
ahead and
one
quote it.
second.
Yeah,
Okay,
St.
one
Thomas
second.
says this too.
Sorry, like I'm not trying to be like I'm actually Catholic. I just like I'm I'm flabbergasted. Um, here, one second. And I'm not trying like I'm not. I hope I haven't been rude or demeaning in this discussion. I'm just trying to have a conversation on a Friday night. Um, okay, give me a second. Okay, yep, I found it.
Yeah, it's chapter 2 on Revelation.
Yeah, if anyone shall say that the one true God, our Creator and Lord, cannot be known with certainty by the natural light of human reason from the things that are made, let him be anathema. So that's like pretty clearly saying that by natural reason alone, you can demonstrate God's existence.
Correct. Again, so St. Thomas's 5 ways is not an objective proof for the existence of God. It's just a deductive demonstration.
How do you. Okay, I'm sorry, but like what you just said, those two, like I don't. The two things that you just tried to make a distinguish like a distinction between, those sound like the exact same thing to my brain. So you distinguish
You
between.
feel you think I'm equivocating? Then what terms am I equivocating on?
Well, wait, can you repeat it real quick, please?
So what two terms do you think I'm equivocating on?
Well, no, like no, not can you repeat the statement that you made before that?
As far as I know, there's no objective proof for the existence of God. There are only deductive demonstrations that the concept of God is possible.
Okay, is a deductive demonstration not an objective proof?
No, it is not.
What do you mean by objective proof?
What do you think it means?
Well, what I think it means is that given that formal concepts, really represent something in reality, it just follows that when you make a logical deduction, a demonstrative logical deduction, it just
Okay.
follows that you've made an objective claim,
Okay,
right?
so is God observable?
No, he's immaterial.
There's your answer.
Okay, but like of causality, like by the principle of causality,
Yeah,
we
but
can.
those are deduced from secondary effects.
But you mean like we
Okay,
can't empirically observe?
here, wait.
Like,
Yeah, that is what is meant by objective proof.
Okay, so
Because you were asking, right? You asked a very vague and generalized question, right? About like, wait, aren't you Catholic? Don't you believe like that we can prove God? No, we can't.
well, okay,
And that's not the wording of Vatican I either.
proving okay, but you're using proof in a very
No,
like
you used
particular
it,
way though.
but it's not
No,
a particular way at all.
here, let's read what
So like,
Vatican I says again.
sure.
Okay, if anyone here, let me just hold on a second. Let me just copy this. Like, what does a proof mean? And like like can you define what you mean by proof? Because I don't
What
know
do
if
you
any of
mean
like.
by it? Because you used the word first. You would either be a special pleading for your understanding of objectivity or proof, or you would be shifting the burden. If you were the one that made that assertion first, and then you're asking for someone else to clarify what that means for you.
Well, no, I'm just trying to okay, well, it
I
sounds
can
like the
only I
distinct
can only provide you with how I understand the Lord to be.
like are you
Because Vatican I is not saying that there's an objective proof for God.
well, it's saying by the okay, well, you're like you seem to be divorcing like the acts of the intellect and like the intellect is grasping in reality. Like that's what I
What?
mean.
That's not my claim at all, and I'm not sure how you're hearing that.
Well, how are you distinguishing between what can be demonstrated and what can be objectively shown to be true? Like
Because you
that's
can't observe God. You can only observe the quote unquote effects of God through his creation. So then
okay.
we can
So,
deduct so then
mhm.
so then we can deductively demonstrate that a God could exist based on the observable effects. But we can't observe God directly, so we don't have an objective proof.
Okay, what does it mean by cannot be known with certainty?
It says all Vatican I says is can be known with certainty from the creation or from the consideration of created things. Can we
Yeah, what does that
demonstrate
mean?
can we demonstrate that it is logically coherent to assume that a God could exist? Yes. That's what the whole purpose of the demonstration is.
No, it's a demonstration isn't merely a valid argument, it's a sound argument too. That's like what a there's a distinction between like the scholastics go through all of this. They distinguish between demonstrations and like mere credibility or probability judgments.
Yeah. So here's the distinction, okay? Certainty is a state of being free from doubt, while proof is a way to establish the truth of a claim. The reason why we don't have an objective proof for the existence of God is because there's no way for us to establish the truth of the claim because we can't observe God. We can be certain because we can be certain in our logic and our reasoning, right, that there is no doubt that a God could exist based on the observation of secondary effects. And that's
I
the
guess
whole point of St. Thomas's five ways.
so the point of Saint
There's no, you see, here's the thing. I gave you an opportunity. Tell me, where do you think I'm equivocating, right? And it seems one, either you're just unfamiliar with metaphysics, or two, you're equivocating between certainty and proof. And you're trying to say that they're literally the same thing and that you're trying to gaslight me into saying that, oh, I'm making an artificial distinction between certainty and proof. Because for you, it's the same thing. That's literally what you said. It's on recording.
well no, I'm not trying to gaslight you. I'm just trying to understand your position. So
So
I'm
so
not trying
was
to
it not true earlier when you were saying that, hey, it seems like you're making a distinction here that actually doesn't exist in reality? Is that what you're saying?
yes, because I don't understand why
Okay, so
like
then
what Mhm.
how is it that certainty and proofs are the same thing, logically speaking?
Well, the reason why it seems certainty and proof. Well, the point is that
No, hold on. No,
I'm.
no, 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 no.
Do you want me to
No shit.
explain?
No shifting the goalpost. We're on this question right now.
Oh no,
So
I'm
your
not.
claim is that certainty and proof are literally the same thing. So what do you mean by this? You're saying
What
that
do I
it's
mean?
not a
I mean
real
that they're the
distinction
same thing.
because you
Yes,
accused
there's
me
no real
earlier.
distinction.
You accused me earlier of making an artificial distinction. That's
I'm
not
not
in reality.
accusing.
You
I'm
did.
making.
It's dude. It's literally recording. You
Why are
did.
you getting so offended? I'm just
I'm
trying to
not
understand
getting
your
offended. I'm
position.
not getting
Yes, you
offended at
are.
all. I'm not getting offended at all. We're gonna take this as slow as we need to be. You were making a claim earlier about my particular claim. Now you have to substantiate that claim. How is it that you see certainty and proof as the same thing?
Because I fail to see like any meaningful distinction. Like I don't I when I if I okay, in order to make a
So
distinction,
it
there
sounds
should
like a
be an
you problem and it
explanation.
doesn't sound like a me problem. Is that
I'm
where we're
trying to
at?
explain.
Sure.
Okay, I don't think you need to make an explanation for identity. You need to make an explanation for non-identity. And what you're doing is you're trying to claim non-identity between two entities, namely provability and demonstrability or whatever. Okay, so I'm trying to understand what is the explanation to ground this real distinction. I don't have to make an explanation for identity between two formal concepts, right? You're the one who has
Wait,
to
wait, wait. Say that one more
substantiate your
time.
position.
You don't have to make a distinction between two formal concepts. What do you mean by that?
No, sorry, I don't have to make it like I don't have to not a distinction. I don't have to like give an explanation between two formal concepts that are really identical to each other. Like the whole idea of there
Sounds
being
like you're making a circular
distinctions.
argument.
Well, no, my point is that
Why
in
would you
order for there to
refer
be,
why
why are
would
you
you
interrupting me?
why would
I'm
you
trying to
refer to two
answer.
separate concepts if they didn't need explanation in the first place? It
Well, no,
sounds like
you're
you're
the one
answering
who's
your own
saying that.
question.
Okay, okay, let me. Well, okay. When I say formal concepts, I mean like a distinction in reason, like reason and reasoning. So there's like different. There's like real distinction, and then logical distinction, and then in logical distinction, there's virtual distinction, and
Correct.
then reason and
That's what I
reasoning.
was just about to get, right? A virtual distinction is one that only exists in the mind. It's not in reality.
Well, no, it does. It has a fundamentum in re. There's like a foundation in the thing in virtue of the way that it presents itself to the
Only
intellect.
in the mind of God.
Well, no, it appears
Only in the mind
distinct.
of God.
What does that mean?
We can only speak of virtual distinction being quote unquote real in the mind of God. That's Aquinas's definition of virtual distinction.
Being real in the mind
Yeah,
of.
they're not real for us when it comes to like God's attributions. They're not real for us anyway in our world, right? It only exists within the mind of God. But we can know of them through a virtual distinction.
Well, yeah, you mean they're really identical in God. Sorry, look, okay. I'm sorry if I didn't mean to like
Well, I mean,
maybe I.
you're kind of going everywhere, right? Which is why, okay, let's get back, okay? So the claim
Yeah,
on the
well that's what
table,
I
the
yeah.
claim on the table that you're making is that certainty, when it comes to human knowledge and human reason, that certainty and proof are the same thing. So go ahead. How do you justify that? Because your
Well,
claim is that it's not a real distinction, and you're trying to appeal to virtual distinctions. So
well
certainty and
no.
proof is just a virtual distinction for human reason. Is that what your claim is?
Well, no. I think that there's a that they're only
What do you mean? No,
distinction
no, no.
in.
So are you retracting that statement earlier?
Okay, I don't think you're being honest.
I don't think I'm being dishonest at all yet. At least you can if you don't feel like I've heard you correctly, you can try to correct me. But as that's why I keep reaching out to you. Like, isn't that what you said? Right? You were saying that you felt like I was making a distinction between certainty and proof that wasn't a
Yes.
real distinction in reality. That's literally your words, verbatim.
Well, no. Well, no. What I okay, so you can correct me, okay? To my understanding, you're trying to say that there is a real distinction between provability and what can be demonstrated. Is that correct? To me, it sounds like you're trying to you're trying to explain that there's a real distinction between what can be proved and what can be demonstrated. Is that like sorry? There's a real distinction between provability and
Logical
uh,
coherency. Yes.
well, demonstrability. Like
Yeah,
you're
with
making a real distinction between these
correct.
two concepts, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That
Hmm.
distinction is real in the world as we experience it. Yes.
Okay. So what I'm trying to understand
Like
is,
there's like like for
mhm.
example, there's like subjective states of mind. It's real, it's not observable, but we can demonstrate that we are certain about the way that we feel through a logical demonstration. Well, this happened to me, that happened to me, and now I feel this way. That's a different demonstration of logic or application of logic, excuse me, than one that uses empirical evidence.
Okay. So when when you say empirical evidence, do you just mean information acquired through the senses, like through sense perception?
The
Question.
distinction is when it comes to certainty,
Why aren't
it's
you
just,
answering my
hold
question?
on, it's just a state of being free from doubt. It means that we can establish that beyond a reasonable doubt, that we can hold this to be more plausible explanation than another. A proof is just a way to establish a particular claim. We don't
I
we don't have a way of observing or even measuring God. We don't. So there's no way that we could establish an objective proof for it. What we can do is demonstrate through logical coherence from the way the world appears to or makes itself known to us. We could logically coherently demonstrate that the idea of God, that is more plausible the case that God does exist than he does not. And this distinction is very important in classical theism to delineate between knowledge claims and truth claims.
So do you think, so you're saying then that all that can be, so all
In
that can be,
Vatican I, right, the scholastic
why are you
understanding,
interrupting me?
in
I'm just
Vatican
trying
I,
to,
well, you
why are
want
you
to
being
talk
so
about Vatican I,
disrespectful?
right? I'm sorry I'm
Well, no.
interrupting your train of thought. In Vatican
Well, yeah,
I,
okay,
that word
then let me
certainty,
speak, please.
yeah. That's the thing. You're equivocating between certainty and provability. That's what you're
Okay,
doing.
but you're being rude and
So you're not,
disrespectful,
you're
and I
right,
don't.
but the problem is glass is you're unable to distinguish between knowledge and truth claims. So how do we know that you're not equivocating between the two?
Well, because according to the metaphysical framework that I understand to be the truth, right? I don't see any need to make this distinction between truth and knowledge claims. I just think
St.
that they're
Thomas makes
identical.
that distinction.
Can you show
And
me?
you're gonna gaslight other Catholics now that St. Thomas doesn't view it this way?
How am I where okay, I mean, you say that you're recording the discussion, so people who are listening can be the judge. But no, I'm not gaslighting you. I'm just trying to understand like what your perspective is. Okay. So I all I did was ask you, where does St. Thomas say that? And then you just accused me of gaslighting you. Can you please show me where St. Thomas says this? Like what you're saying? Because to my understanding, like St. Thomas, he doesn't hold to like a correspondence theory of truth.
No, he doesn't. It's coherence.
Yeah, he exactly. Like he holds to this theory of truth which whereby the intellect conforms to reality. Uh
Question 2, Chapter 4. Wasn't it pointless for God to reveal truths that natural reason is in principle capable of establishing on its own, i.e., the preambles of faith, such as God's existence and some of the divine attributes? Reply: if the preambles were not revealed, then three really bad consequences would ensue. One, only a few people would have knowledge of the preambles. Some people are by dint of their intellectual endowment incapable of coming to the natural knowledge of the preambles of the faith. No amount of study and studious application would bring them to a knowledge of the preambles. B, most people would have to tend to the necessities of life and hence do not have enough leisure time to pursue philosophical studies. Quote, parentheses, within the church too, there are many other important roles to be filled. C, many who have the innate intellectual prerequisites and the possibility of being freed from other duties are nonetheless too indolent for such studies, like perhaps yourself. Much hard study is required, and those who are willing to undergo such a regimen are few in number, even though God has implanted in human nature a natural desire for knowledge. 2. Those who did discover the preambles would do so only after a long time, which is bad because it is important for them to adhere to the truth as soon as possible. This is in part because the profundity of these truths and the arguments leading one to knowledge of them, and in part because of the long preparation needed in order to approach these matters with even a modicum of confidence. In addition, these passions of youth get in the way of this long and necessary preparation, as does senility. St. Thomas concludes, thus, if reason were the only way to come to a knowledge of God, then the human race would remain in the darkest shadows of ignorance. For the cognition of God, which makes human beings especially perfect and good, would come only to a few, and to them only after a long time. 3. The chances are great that the knowledge attained would be admixed with error and uncertainty, because this is the weakness of our intellect. Many would fail to see the truth of those things which have been demonstrated, because they know that many who have been called wise have disagreed with one another and thus accepted falsehoods on important matters. On the other hand, many of the alleged demonstrations probably contain some falsehoods, and so are deserving only of tentative assent. Possibly, or probably, the best we can do is have a well-grounded opinion that God exists and has certain attributes. At least this much is true. We won't get to the adherence of the martyrs just from philosophical studies. St. Thomas concludes, and so it was necessary that a fixed certitude and pure truth with respect to divine matters be presented to human beings through the way of faith. Fucking stupid.
here, so I want to respond to this because St. Thomas
Because
is
you're
talking.
stupid.
I don't think Christ would treat people like this.
Excuse me, sir.
Are you?
This room is not a safe space. Okay, and also it is not a preaching room.
Well, no, you're Catholic.
You can revisit the rules of the room whenever you have time if you want further clarification.
Well, no, I look. I'm not
Excuse me,
offended.
sir.
I'm
You
just
might find logic and debate to be cold, hard, and cynical, but those are the stakes of the game. Zero sum game, winner take all.
I just okay. I mean, I don't. That doesn't mean that you should act that way, though.
If you
Is like
feel
what I'm saying.
insulted, sir, it's your own damn fucking fault.
Okay, so I want to respond to this. Would you like me to?
Sure.
Okay, so this is Saint Thomas talking about implicit faith, right?
No.
So
The question is, wasn't it pointless for God to reveal truths that natural reason is in principle capable of establishing on its own?
yeah, so uh, yeah, I agree. It's also
So,
I
in
guess.
other
Wait,
words, it
can I
was
respond?
necessary, quote unquote, it was necessary that God revealed those particular truths or preambles of faith for us to know them in the first place.
Well, no, it's saying
Again,
that it's
necessity is not a property, like we're going, like it's full circle, okay? Necessity
why
is
are you doing this? Do you care
necessity,
about the
excuse
truth?
me, is merely a property. Existence is not. Don't feel like you've been crossed, sir. You literally asked me for where in St. Thomas does he make that distinction between knowledge and truth claims. And I literally just fucking quote mined it for you. So, anyways, go ahead.
Okay,
Share your feelings.
so I agree that there is a so I might have misspoken. So I agree that there is a distinction between what can be known by our reasoning and then obviously truth in itself. So for example, the Trinity, I don't think the Trinity can be proven by natural reason alone. There are certain
Now
truths
you
that can
get
be
it.
that
Yeah,
okay, so there are certain truths that cannot be grasped by reason alone. However,
correct.
all knowledge does pertain to truth. So like I
But
don't
all knowledge pertains to truth. Correct.
yes.
Correct.
Yeah, so therefore what can be known by natural reason alone conforms with truth. So for example, if I
Yes,
can know
but the truth is
wait,
always asymmetrical to knowledge.
well wait, please let me finish. So when the Vatican I says, uh, if anyone shall
Abu, I'm
say
going to
that the
mute you
one
real
true
quick.
God, our Creator, our Lord, cannot be known with certainty by the natural light of human reason through the things that are made, let him be anathema. So what it's saying is that by natural reason, by our knowledge, we can conform our knowledge to the fact that God exists.
Correct.
That's
And
what it's
that can be
saying.
done through natural reason alone. We can demonstrate, right, that it's logically coherent beyond a reasonable doubt that God could exist.
I see. So, but it sounds like then, okay, so far I agree with you, right? 100%. But then you
Like
make this
that word
move.
certainty is literally packed. That the reason why they use that at Vatican I is because the scholastic definition of it is pretty sound.
Yeah, I agree. But then when when I identify that with the word proof, you seek to make a distinction between demonstration and proof.
Correct.
So it sounds like what you're saying is all that can be proven is what is directly perceived through the five senses.
Not just the five senses. It can be through, like in mathematics, we can derive measurements, right? Like measurements, like this is referred to in fundamental physics as a problem of measurement, but that's a different. We don't have to go too far on that tangent. But like, for example, energy, right? It's not a real thing, but it is a measurement of work, right? That exists as part of the contingency between two or more um, physical objects in space. So space, matter, energy, and time are all in a continuum.
Yeah, So I guess to kind of relate to what you just said, to my understanding, like for example, time. I understand that the scholastics would say that time is actually a being in reason,
So
and
okay, okay, before you start going there, do you believe that God is measurable?
no.
Okay, there you go. There's your answer.
Well, when you say, yeah, I don't think God is measurable. No.
Okay, great.
So, so for example, like um, things that are measurable, though, obviously have a foundation in material substances. Uh, so, like time is a measurement of
Correct.
motion taken in the before and after, right? But that measurement has a foundation as an accident in material substances, as like what Aristotle calls quandolocatio, or like when-ness, when
And
something
then
is.
later Augustine is going to make a distinction between ontological time versus time as a measurement. So the reason why I just wanted to like shorten this examination by just saying, do you believe God is measurable? Is
Hmm.
because when you start trying to talk about time and all this stuff, like there's other metaphysics that go with just a theory of time.
Sure. And it sounds like what a St. Augustine, is it St. Augustine?
Hmm.
It sounds like what St. Augustine does is he is using time. He seeks to use time in, well, it sounds like what he's doing is he's maybe using ontological time with respect to like the accident of quandolocatio. I mean, because time. I mean, would you believe that? Okay, sorry, this is kind of off topic. We can
It
talk about
is.
this at a
That's
different
why
time.
in fundamental physics, there's a way that we talk about time as a property. Okay, but even as a property, it's still within a continuum within a particular system. So, but our denotation of time, there is an important metaphysical distinction between time as a measurement and time as like a real experience.
No, I agree, and yeah, I agree. Uh,
What
so we
this,
can just.
yeah. Getting back to the point, you still believe that it is artificial or quote unquote a virtual distinction to hold that certainty and proof are necessarily distinct and separate, correct?
So I don't think it's a I don't think like those concepts are virtually distinct. I think that they're distinct by reasoning, or sorry, reasoning reasoned, right? Like it's just like a kind of
What?
logical distinction.
I can meet you there if one clarifying question, do you believe that logic is objective?
Uh, I need to clarify that. Do you mind if I do?
Before that clarification, let me ask you another question. Like that's like directly related. Do you believe that logic is transcendental to existence?
No, I think it
Okay,
follows logically.
fair.
Okay,
Then,
yeah.
okay,
So-
so then back to the first question. Do you believe logic is objective? You want to clarify. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that logic is objective in the sense that it follows posteriorly from pure being itself. So, for example, in other words, I think that logic, like the principles of logic, or the laws of logic in like mathematics, these are like concepts that are held in created intellects or like in created minds. Um, they're basically creations, and so I don't think that they have to like inhere in God's intellect in some primitive way. Rather, I think that logic and mathematics are just ways of created intellects interfacing with God's
Correct. Correct.
creation
Correct.
in a
Got it. Got it. Got it.
discursive
Got it. Right. Right.
manner.
Right. So it
Yeah.
seems like then if it can be logically demonstrated to be coherent from a set of deductive logical premises, then it's still a real distinction. Like logic itself is objective enough to demonstrate that this could be certain.
Uh, oh, you mean there's like a real distinction between God and like the created effects?
So it's really interesting because when I ask you whether or not logic is objective, I'm not asking you an epistemological question, but your clarification was an epistemological clarification, which I actually don't find any problems with, because there are many different theories, right, of how we account for quote unquote logic in an epistemological way, right, that are still coherent, quote unquote, to, the tradition, the intellectual tradition of the church in a broad way. But having said that, right, your clarification is merely an epistemological clarification. I'm still looking for whether or not you can affirm that logic is objectively real. What I hear from your clarification, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that even if logic is merely a result of the created order and our ability to know creation as it exists, it would still be objectively real, right?
Uh, yeah,
Okay, then
yeah.
we agree.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I guess I just want to get back to this distinction. I guess I can see like where you're coming from. That when it comes to then our discursive reasoning, it sounds like what you're saying is, uh, given that our discursive reasoning flows from the created effects from God, uh, what follows from logical proofs are limited to the created effects and don't go to the understanding of God, I guess.
Yeah, so our knowledge of God is still a human knowledge of God, correct? And
Well, yeah, like any. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
therefore, it is necessary that God reveals those truths about him for us to know that they are truths. So necessity is merely a property. Necessity is not a real distinction at all. Like, for example, like another way is like what exists is not necessary,
Would you say that God exists, or would you have to?
but
Would
it
you qualify
exists,
that?
therefore it's necessary that God reveals those truths for us to know them.
It exists, therefore it's necessary for God
To
to
reveal
reveal
them for
those,
us to know them. That's the
like
whole
everything
treatise.
about.
That's literally the whole treatise
Mhm.
of St. Thomas on Revelation.
That's interesting. Okay, um okay, I just want to ask again, so you're trying to say that the concept of provability and the concept of demonstration are two distinct, like really distinct concepts, right?
In reality, yes. I believe that metaphysics is a real science, just like I believe mathematics are the real science. They're just two different applications of logic.
Okay. Um
Like conceptual logic and mathematical logic are just two different applications. They require two different disciplines of mental dexterity. Just
so are you
because you're
mhm.
mathematically or analytically intelligent about certain axioms does not mean that you're one, either knowledgeable, or two, coherent in conceptual demonstrations of logic.
Sure. Okay, but then I'm going to quote Vatican I again because it
Oh
specifically
my
states
gosh.
if, well, it says, if anyone shall say that the one true God, our Creator, our Lord, cannot be known with certainty by the natural light of human reason through the things that are made, let him be anathema. So that is okay. I want to give you the chance to respond to this. How does that not contradict what you just said?
Because again, certainty is not the same thing as a proof.
I
So
guess.
so clearly
Okay.
it doesn't say that if the same Holy Mother holds and teaches that the Trinity, the source and end of all things, can be known with certainty from the consideration of created things. Like clearly it doesn't say that.
Right, but you said
Because that
that
would be
any knowledge.
because that would be a circular argument. Maybe I misheard you because I thought we already kind of clarified that
Okay.
there are ways of knowing that God could exist based on secondary effects.
Yes.
And I also literally read from you St. Thomas's Summa contra Gentiles. Did you read his Summa contra Gentiles?
I haven't read the whole thing, no.
Okay, well then maybe you should.
Yeah. I'm just very
You know what
I guess
also might be helpful for you? Let me pull it up really quick.
I do I guess I'm still perplexed because I still
Are you
don't.
familiar with Rationes Fide?
Yes.
Okay.
So uh I'm still kind of perplexed though because I'm not aware of the scholastics using demonstration, because to my understanding demonstration is like what is meant by proof in this sense, like in this whole discussion. That's like how I've heard them used in the same way, at least like in the English speaking
Yeah, St.
world.
Thomas
I don't
doesn't.
um
Yeah, I mean,
are you
yeah, I mean, I don't know what you're appealing to. Are you just saying like, are you just appealing to anecdotal evidence now?
well no, I
So what's your claim?
well my claim is um okay, so my claim is still I don't think there's any text from the scholastics showing that they use the term proof and the term demonstration in distinct ways.
Let me ask you a different way then. Do you believe that Thomas's five ways are an objective proof for for the existence of God?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Okay. Is this like textual evidence? Is it would you say that this is textual evidence of St. Thomas using provability and demonst well I guess he doesn't like use those words. I would appreciate, cuz like look, I'm not I'm trying to be good faith here. Like I like if this is if they really if
I
he
think
if,
you've been more
especially
bad faith than you've been good faith, but go ahead. You're free to believe like whatever you want.
okay. So it
You're shifting the burden because you still haven't made a claim on how you believe. You haven't even justified how you believe that proof and certainty are like literally the same thing. Like
okay.
you're still
So
trying to you're literally trying to still defend your position on Vatican I. And like I when I literally ask you, do you believe that Thomas's five ways are an objective proof for God? And you said yes. So I guess you're kind of committed to that view.
yeah, so by yeah, that's okay. Cuz I guess it sounds like well here.
So I'm sir, you're committed to that view. I don't know what else to tell you. Like as far as I'm aware, like most people recognize
Mhm.
they're not stupid like you to assume that St. Thomas's five ways are literally an objective proof. They're just demonstrations of logical coherence. And in our worldview, logic is objective. So knowledge and truth claims are not isn't just a virtual distinction.
I never said that they're
No,
virtually
right,
distinct.
but the thing is, you're disqualified from holding that position because you believe St. Thomas's five ways to actually be an objective proof, and secondly, you believe that Vatican I's use of certainty is interchangeable with proof. So you're committed to this view.
Well, I mean like I'm open to changing my mind if there's reason to believe otherwise. Like if you have evidence, like firm evidence from
So
like any
so
yeah, go ahead.
so from the Summa Contra Gentiles, I quoted you question
Mhm.
two, right? And it's literally on the relationship between divine revelation and human reason. And you're saying that this isn't sufficient enough to convince you otherwise?
No, because
I'm not saying
I
that it
think
has to. I'm just asking.
well no, because I don't think it's supporting the I don't think it's supporting the relevant distinction that you're seeking to support. rather, St. Thomas is making a different kind of distinction he's seeking to support. So, I mean, do you know the distinction between quod nos and quod se? Okay, so uh, quod nos is what can be known by natural reason alone. Quod se is what can be shown in virtue of itself. What can be demonstrated through the reason and what can be demonstrated in virtue of the thing in itself. So quod nos, demonstration through reason, quod se, demonstration in virtue of its own like self authenticity. Okay? So for example, we don't have like there's this proposition P that firmly like demonstrates that the Trinity is necessary. But we don't have access to that. Like the created order just because the three persons act concomitantly with the divine essence. Like there's no way for us to know by natural reason alone that God is three persons, right? That proposition, that conclusion, that necessary truth only comes through divine revelation, right?
I think you're trying to backpedal right now, but continue.
Okay. So, but that doesn't, even though we don't have access to the proposition that demonstrates or proves that the Trinity is necessary, that doesn't mean that that proposition doesn't exist. It's just rather than being accessible to our intellect, it will only be made known through the beatific vision when we uh, fully grasp the divine essence. Like when the divine essence becomes an intelligible species of like our intellect. So uh, that's like the distinction between quod nos and quod se. And like I think that's what St. Thomas is saying. Uh, Moreover, I think St. Thomas is also making a really great point that
Yeah.
a
So,
lot of people
are you familiar with Plotinus?
yes, but like I'm not very well
Okay.
read on Plotinus.
So, are you familiar with Justin Martyr and Logos Spermaticos?
Yes, I mean I haven't like read up on these people.
Okay. So, I mean, those are two more things that you can take a look at. So Logos Spermaticos, right, is a Stoic idea, right, where they literally believe that logic was quote unquote like they believe that it was divine, but I think what they just meant was that it's objective, right? Like it's real. Um, so the way that the church fathers would talk about it is that if the human nature didn't have the capability to receive revelation, we wouldn't be able to know that it's the truth or about God to begin with. So therefore, that's part of their explanation for not only what the logos spermaticos is, but that it's also within every single human person. That possibility to know the truth of God. Okay. So if one can demonstrate through the logos or logic that it is conceivable or more plausible than not to hold that God could exist, right? That would be a proof that quote unquote revelation could be necessary for us to know.
I
But proof and certainty are not the same thing.
yeah, I guess we're using these words in different ways.
Yeah,
Because
you're
like
equivocating. You're already committed to the view that certainty and proof are not a real distinction.
well you're well the way that you describe my position, it's like I'm not open to changing my mind. Like I'm open to changing my mind. You just have to show me the evidence that these like Justin Martyr, uh these like people in the scholastics throughout the scholastic tradition that they made this distinction that you're describing. And like the thing is, again, I just want to go back to this writing on from Summa contra Gentiles. St. Thomas isn't saying that we can't know about God through natural reason alone. He's just saying that a lot of people like they don't have the convenience in themselves to go out and study philosophy to know God through these philosophical arguments. That's why God like gave us.
Think about it. If the preambles were not, right? He's saying that these are three consequences if you assume it's the case that it is possible for human reason to know the divine revelation. That's precisely what's happening to you.
Okay. Here,
Like,
I'm
here, man,
gonna.
it's forgivable if you don't have as much experience like you keep claiming not to. But I think you have a lot of unresolved doubt about these things that could easily be remedied by just freaking reading the sources.
I mean, I'm not.
And
Okay,
and
so
but here's the thing that I have an issue with. You have the temerity to go around, right, with some amount of like little bit of knowledge going around accusing other Catholics of not adhering to Vatican I, Vatican II, whatever.
but all I'm saying is that I asked. I just want to see how this distinction, like that these, like okay, well, ultimately this just goes back to Vatican One, because it sounds like that you're employing a certain interpretation of certainty and knowledge to like read in your understanding of provability and demonstration that like fits your metaphysics
Okay,
and
so
epistemology.
all right, shut up. Here we go. Humanum genus or generis, humani generis. Okay, and Pope John Paul II also covers this too in Fides et Ratio. Have you read either two documents yet?
No.
Oh my gosh, dude. So, after we go over this, I'm gonna say go and read John Paul II's Fides et Ratio. But we're gonna go over Pius XII. All right. Disagreement and error among men on moral and religious matters have always been a cause of profound sorrow to all good men. But above all, to the true and loyal sons of the church, especially today, when we see the principles of Christian culture being attacked on all sides. Two, it is not, paragraph 2, it is not surprising that such discord and error should always have existed outside the fold of Christ. For though, absolutely speaking, human reason by its own natural force and light can arrive at a true and certain knowledge of the one personal God, who by his providence watches over and governs the world, and also of the natural law, which the Creator has written in our hearts, still there are not a few obstacles to prevent reason from making efficient and fruitful use of its natural ability. The truths that have to do with God and the relations between God and men completely surpass the sensible order and demand self-surrender and self-abnegation in order to be put into practice and to influence practical life. Now, the human intellect, in gaining the knowledge of such truths, is hampered both by the activity of the senses and the imagination, and by evil passions arising from original sin. Hence, men easily persuade themselves in such matters that they do not wish to believe as false or at least doubtful. It is for this reason that divine revelation must be considered morally necessary, so that those religious and moral truths which are not known of their nature beyond the reach of reason in the present condition of the human race may be known by all men. Why is there a typo in Vatican VA? May be known by all men readily with a firm certainty and with freedom from all error.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the human
Well, wait.
intelligence sometimes
Wait,
experiences
here, can we
difficulties.
pause?
No. Furthermore, human
Okay,
intelligence
well,
sometimes
then I'm just gonna
experiences
leave because like
difficulty in
I
forming a judgment about
okay.
the credibility of the Catholic faith, notwithstanding the many wonderful external signs
He
God has
left.
given, which are sufficient.
Just gave up.
Yeah, what a fucking idiot.